So I'm thinking about starting a new series where I talk about the mice that I'm using most in a period of time. And I expect what I'll do, if it goes down well and if people find it interesting, is I will cover it whenever something significant changes or when there's something interesting to cover. So these are not my usual main sort of three mice. I would typically use the EC1 CW, the Vaxee AX, and maybe the NP01S. But with the release of the Vaxee NP01, it kind of fills that role of all of those mice for me, because the issue I had with the EC1 was that it was almost too relaxed. I love that mouse, by the way, I'm still going to review it, but the EC1 was almost too relaxed for me. It was obviously really big, which is perfect for my 21 by 10.5 centimeter hands, but I liked the AX by comparison because the AX was a little bit more aggressive in your hand. So the way I would describe the EC1 versus the AX is you would lay your hand on top of the EC1. You would have the AX inside your hand. So that was a really nice sort of dynamic feeling, kind of felt like my hand was more in an aggressive position and it felt really nice and fun to play with. And then the NP01S was like my weekend sort of play thing. You know, I really enjoyed playing with that mouse. It was just really fun. It was just a hair too small for me. So the AX and the EC1 were both almost perfect for me. They didn't quite scratch the itch of being what I think is like a perfect mouse, at least for my hand size. And then the NP01 came along, and I think this thing is really, really good for me. So I no longer feel like I need to play with those other mice because this mouse just fits so comfortably in my hand, and it has that big size, which I like from the EC1, although it's nowhere near as big physically in terms of dimensions. It feels very big in your hand because it's got a nice profile on the hump right at the start. It's really nice and wide around the back end too, just like the EC1 and the AX would be, but it's a little bit more dominant or predominant in your grip because of this bit here not having that ergo slant. So I can really sink that into my palm if I want to, and it feels like a really good size. The best thing about this mouse for me is the width of it. It feels just really comfortable, like my hand is so relaxed holding this mouse, and it's probably the only mouse at the moment that I use that I have my fingers in such a, and it's not an aggressive position, but that's quite an aggressive position in my typical grip. And it's, I think, what you would refer to as like a pincer grip that I use. So I kind of stick the mouse in between the fleshy parts of my thumb and my pinky, and I kind of grab it that way, sink my thumb into the comfort grooves on the left-hand side, and then just relax my fingers into the right-hand side of the mouse due to those sort of ergo element, you know, the finger shelf. I really like this mouse. This is probably the best mouse I have ever used for my specific hand size. And like I say, it's kind of not invalidated, but it doesn't make me want to play with those other mice anymore because this does everything I was trying to get out of those other mice. And that's where these two come in. So I quite like to have a lot of variety in my sort of main rotation. And these two are really different options to the NP01, which I would consider to be my main mouse now. So I'm going to start by talking about the Zowie U2. So this is a symmetrical mouse, and one of the things that I like to do with my mice, like I'll go back to the NP01 for a second, is really leave my fingers all the way along that finger shelf on the right hand side. I get a lot of stability from my thumb and my pinky and my ring finger across the mouse. The unusual way that I've grown to grip the U2 is to kind of slip my finger into the comfort grooves on the right hand side of the mouse, slip my thumb into the comfort grooves on the left side of the mouse, and then I basically get a really good extended fingertip grip, and there's nothing on my finger there that's not in contact with the mouse. This feels incredible on the U2 for me. So I can pincer it if I want to, but I don't have to because my hands are quite large. I can kind of just push it further forward in my hands. You know, it pushes the sensor a little bit further forward too, and it gives me really nice, what feels like a light, dynamic mouse experience, aiming experience. I love the comfort grooves on the side of the U2. You know, they feel really different to basically everything else I've tried. And I'm really glad I found this way of gripping the U2, because that feels super comfortable to me. And basically what it feels like to me is I've got my pinky knuckle, maybe this knuckle in contact with the hump on this side, and then my thumb knuckle in contact with the thumb groove on this side, and everything else is kind of floating above the mouse. It's really comfortable, I really like it. And the Zowie mice, of course, are insane for the quality, how they feel in your hand. And the U2 is honestly just a great shape. Like, there's so much versatility in how you can hold this thing. One of the videos I released recently was just gushing about the Vaxee mice. So I didn't cover the NP01 because it wasn't released at the time. But I was talking about how the AX and the NP01S have like different ways you can hold them. They're very versatile in that sense. You know, you can approach them in lots of different ways. While the U2 probably wasn't designed with that kind of aim grip versatility in mind, it certainly achieves it in my experience. So I really like this mouse for that sort of versatility and how you can grip it, the quality of it. You know, this thing is solid and the grip on it is just perfect. I love this thing. And then finally, we come on to the Sprime, and this is marketed as an ergo, but it's very different to a lot of the ergos I've used before. Doesn't that look really cool as well? So the way this mouse felt to me initially out of the box is very different to how I've ended up playing with it. And the biggest difference with this mouse and all my other ergos, hopefully I can show you now on the screen, is that there isn't really a shelf on this side of the mouse. And what it kind of feels like in my hand is, it kind of feels like there's like a wide base and it kind of comes up in a cone almost. So the peak of the hump kind of comes up in a cone, and it's quite narrow in the hump, whereas you compare that to this mouse, the hump is huge by comparison. So this Sprime, basically, you know, if you look at your hand when you pinch, you know, if you're doing a pincer claw, it just kind of fits in that little gap for me. And it's so locked in. It is so light, and it is just a brilliant mouse. You know, it's a different option to those two because the shape is so unique. And what I also really like about this mouse is, although some people might say it's too small for you, I kind of really pull it in to my palm. I get a lot of stability through my thumb on this side of the mouse, and I kind of drag it back into my palm with my ring and my pinky finger. And then if I'm in a moment where I need to get some different sort of ranges of motion in my aim, I can kind of pull it out of my grip, and I can just do a little bit of fingertip motion with my fingers and my thumb at the top half of the mouse, and I can just drag it back into my palm at any moment when I want to. Another thing I really like about this mouse, and I haven't explored too much recently, is how it feels so different to play with in different grip styles. So you can play with it in fingertip grip as well, because it's quite a light mouse. And although I thought initially when I got it out of the box I wouldn't be able to grip it in too many different ways, that's not how it has turned out after about a week and a half of use. I really like the Sprime, and I like it especially because it's something different and unique, and it gives me, between these three mice at the moment, it gives me three really different unique things to play around with when I want to try something new. Hopefully that was a coherent kind of video and it was interesting. I guess the main thing for me is trying to get across that not everyone has one main, although I would consider mine to be the NP01. You know, I do have a rotation and it changes all the time. So as my rotation changes, I will probably push out another video, probably not for a while. I'll see how this one is received. And let me know if you like this style of video. It's really just me getting all the enthusiastic thoughts that I have for this hobby out of my head. I'm enjoying these products, I want to talk about them, and stand by for a full review on the Sprime and the NP01 very shortly.